last year, for those that were in attendance, I talked a lot about and provided a lot about evidence around the fact that higher education isn't special when it comes to digital transformation, and in particular, digital disruption. Right? Yes, we've had centuries of experience that, no matter what type of innovation hits us, we're able to overcome it as an industry. But now is different, right? And so when I started to kind of prepare for this presentation and start to think about, I pulled up last year's presentation and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to talk too much about trying to convince anyone that digital disruption is happening. Because the reality is higher education, there's an enormous amount of articles, blogs that are out there that are showing every industry how everybody's being disrupted. So I'm going to just assume that. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards, one-on-one, about the impact that is happening on higher education when it comes to technology. And I want to talk a little bit about digital transformation. So I just published an article on Monday that talks about digital transformation. And I like to keep my sessions as interactive as possible. So I want to start by asking for a volunteer, can I get a definition, anybody's definition on digital transformation? Come on, give it a shot. All the way in the back.
I'll give one Blockbuster.
Your what?
Blockbuster got destroyed by digital transformation.
All right, Blockbuster got destroyed by digital transformation. Okay, yep.
Stuff changing because of our devices.
Stuff changing because of our devices. Good, okay. Anybody else want to take a crack? So I define digital transformation this way. Software is running everything, right? And because software is running everything, or will run everything, right? And that's not gonna change. That's gonna speed up. So the level of integrations, the level of connections that we all need to have is impactful. But here's the key. It's not about the technology. It's about your organization and operations, in addition to the technology. So I'm going to challenge everybody in this room. You all play a very critical role within your institution. And I'm guessing you guys probably don't realize it. Okay? Mobile. You all have a role in your mobile on campus. And mobile is a very impactful way to kind of start to demonstrate how your organization and operations can change or should change, right? To be able to support some of the new capabilities that are out there. I should also mention, just as a way of background, to kind of show you guys I have some mobile credibility. I've been in higher ed for about 11 years in software. I'm a software guy, product guy. Prior to that, I was in telecom, building voice over IP applications on mobile smartphones, early smartphones at that time, working with Nokia, Sony Ericsson, so on and so forth. After I left that, I took a job at Blackboard. I owned the mobile strategy at Blackboard, where we bought Terribly Clever. I moved on from Blackboard, went to Datatel, i.e. Ellucian, owned the mobile strategy there. I was responsible for the early architecture of Ellucian Mobile. And then I went to Laureate and owned the mobile strategy there. So needless to say, I have a lot of mobile experience. And I think in particular, you guys are on the forefront of showing your institution how to truly transform. Even though you don't call it digital transformation, but you absolutely have a critical role. We define it at Higher Digital. In addition to how I've just defined it for you guys, there are some things that absolutely must happen in an institution. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this in my presentation. But institutions have to develop a learning ecosystem. Okay? And this learning ecosystem has to increase alignment between four things: leadership, operations, technology, and the organization. And in addition to that, your strategy and execution have to be clearly closely aligned, integrated, I would actually say. Okay? And we're doing some very innovative things at Higher Digital around the software side that deals with developing a learning ecosystem and addressing the strategy and execution piece. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that at all, really, but I did want to kind of point that out. This is hot off the press. This is the fourth annual MIT Deloitte study. It was titled Coming of Age Digitally. It just was published last week. And it's about a 50-page, 60-page document, super meaty, really easy to read. But I'm going to summarize the 6 key takeaways. And keep in mind, these are, the 6 takeaways are not just for higher education. This is for all industries. Okay? And there's some interesting things that come out of this. And again, I'm going to stress this, higher education is not immune. This is happening to us now. We're at the beginning stages of this. And you're already starting to see some pretty big changes. And I'll just give you a quick example. Arizona State is one of our clients. And I can tell you they are pushing the envelope when it comes to technology and how they're delivering essentially certifications, degrees, engagements. They're really looking at using technology to test out different models on how they can engage more students at a lower cost. They're not nearly where they want to be, but they're really embracing this concept of digital transformation and really taking a look at all aspects of their business. You know, they're not that far ahead of everybody in this room. Okay. So, man, this is really hard to read. Apologies. Okay, so I'll read this out. So the first item that has come out of this study is that organizations are beginning to make progress digitally. When you look at the previous 3 surveys that MIT and Deloitte has done, organizations really haven't moved the dial. This is the first year, based upon their study, more or less asking the same questions, that actually organizations, the investments that they've been making, the changes that they've been making, they're actually starting to see very real distinctions between organizations that have prioritized this and organizations that have not. Okay? Number 2, developing leaders sets digitally maturing companies apart. Notice the key word is developing. I published, actually right before Kuroga conference last year, I published a pretty lengthy article where I argue in there that every institution needs to have a digital leader on the cabinet. Typically, I would say that's not the CIO, although it could be. The CIO, more or less, is very execution-oriented, although I know a lot of CIOs that are very strategic. But you need to have somebody that really understands the operations and business, right? Academics, as well as the technology, right? You need to have somebody there. And just plugging somebody in at the cabinet level is not good enough. This actually builds upon what I was seeing at that time, and actually taking the next step further is you have to develop leaders. And I would argue the fact that you guys are here, the topic that we're talking about, you guys are all leaders. Now, whether or not your institution is supportive and all that, I'm guessing probably not. But every institution has their own culture, so I won't assume that. But the reality is that you got to, as an executive team, as an organization, you have to develop the leaders. Because, you know, here's the bad news about digital transformation. There is no destination. It's a journey, right? Because I'm going to get to this in a second. The innovation that we have coming at us is going to be really hard to kind of comprehend and address. 3, push decision-making farther down in the organization. How many of you heard of Agile? How many of you are sick of hearing about Agile? For obvious reasons. I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with an organization. It could be a big media company. We have a big media company as a client. But we do specialize in higher education. And everybody's like, yeah. We all do Agile. But the reality is hardly anybody really does it. But one of the key tenets of Agile is really pushing down and enabling key decision makers all the way down as far as you possibly can, right? And part of that also comes in with transparency. Number 4, digital businesses are faster, more flexible, and distributed. Again, we talk about Agile, right? You have to have a very nimble organization, right? And Heather and I were just talking. There are institutions that can afford bureaucracy. A lot of us can't. Okay, we have just launched a digital health assessment, and I encourage you guys to take it. I can give you some more information on it on our website a month ago. And we're getting a lot of very positive responses. But this is a 15-minute survey that will essentially plot you on a magic quadrant, operationally, technically, organizationally, and then overall where you fit in terms of your digital health. Mobile, we do ask some mobile questions in there. But one of the interesting things that's coming out is that we are finding that in particular community colleges, now this is early sample, but community colleges tend to be more innovative and more healthy digitally. The bigger the organizations, not so. But because I think they can afford the bureaucracy today. I don't think in the future though. Experiment and iterate. Higher ed is very risk averse, right? But you got to experiment and iterate. Another way to say it, and did anyone here attend the ASU GSV conference this year in San Diego? So President Crow for ASU got up on stage and gave a speech at the end. It was fascinating. And one of the things he said is similar to things that I've been thinking about as well, is that there's some irony with higher education. We're great at teaching, horrible at learning. And that's really what that is about. Experiment and iterate is really about learning, right? And again, I'm gonna plug mobile. It's a perfect way to do this. You can try out new things. Doesn't work, take it off. Take the module off, right? Engage with the students, ask questions. And then the last thing is skills development is critical. This is going to become even more imperative, and I have some points, slides to illustrate my point here in a second. But we all have to kind of continue continuous learning, right? We all are going to play it from an institution point of view. We are all going to engage individuals on constant learning, right? I think that in particular is where our business model is going to change pretty significantly. But we as staff have to also develop our skills around this, okay? So those are the 6 things that MIT and Deloitte has come, and I said this just was hot off the press last week. So some of the other things that we are at Higher Digital that we are seeing and hearing, we have all different types of clients, all different sizes, classifications, but these are actually quotes coming from meetings. I'm guessing some of this may sound familiar to you. There are several key initiatives in progress, but we need a clear roadmap and digital vision. What's important? What's the best path to get us there? Everyone seems to be moving so fast. How do we stay competitive? How do we increase our speed of innovation, delivery, and learning? I have an anecdotal, just to kind of put this in perspective in higher education, to kind of make you guys feel a little bit better. One of our big media clients, it was interesting. We came in and started consulting for them. And their essentially initial response to our engagement was like, you guys aren't moving fast enough. And my response was like, hold on. Your culture is of a newsroom where everything is like chaotic anyway. I said, the reality is you guys are just running around crazy, but you don't know really what you're doing. You're not coordinated. You're not organized. I was like, you gotta kind of slow down a little bit to go faster. And that's essentially what that is indicating. How do I get a handle on technology trends? How am I going to move my institution forward? What are the next generation of capabilities? Right? We're barely, the water level's here today, right? There's a tsunami coming, right? So how do we as individuals and as an organization handle all that? And then how do we, even taking a step further, how do we build market-leading solutions? How do we innovate? And one of my themes last year, and it's totally true even more so this year, is you guys are kind of more on your own now than you ever have been. And what I mean by that is my previous employers, Blackboard, Ellucian, but they're not the only ones. They're kind of in the survival mode. They're being digitally disrupted, right? And so what's happening is when you look back, if you've been in this industry for a while, 10 years ago, you were looking at these companies and others to innovate, right? We just inherited the tools and we said, all right, we're an innovative institution, we're providing all different types of capabilities and so on and so forth. That's not the case anymore. These guys are trying to survive and they've stopped innovating. So they're trying to just essentially move, like in the case of Ellucian, they're taking all their software and moving it in the cloud. That's taking almost all their effort. So there's no like innovation. So this concept of innovation, and the reality is you guys are doing a lot of innovative things. Now it's just a matter of how do you get that out? How do you work through that? And then how do we determine the right priorities and how do we deliver successfully? I can tell you that 50, 60, 70% of institutions that I work with, when it comes to the IT backlog, most of those are pet projects that have no real impact to the strategic plan of the institution. Again, affording bureaucracy. That's crazy. I mean, I can tell you as a small company, we would be out of business in a couple months if that was the way we would operate. Now, full disclosure, I should say, I'm not a pure, just all-out technology guy. First of all, my undergrad, I was an English major. 2, I've never taken a technology class, but I've been in software my whole career. But I do believe in liberal arts. I do believe in face-to-face interaction. But I also firmly believe that technology can deliver the type of interactions that we all, as educators, all aspire to. We want to be able to teach more and more students and have more and more of an impact. And I believe technology plays an important role. It's just that how we're organized historically is kind of getting in the way of a lot of that. Okay, next couple slides starts to put things in perspective. This is pretty crazy in my mind. So literally in a couple of years, less than 2 years, $1,000, right? So the y-axis over here is a calculations per second, and then this is a timeline down here. I know it's hard to read, but by 2025, $1,000 buys you a human brain. For those that are still wondering whether or not digital disruption is going to happen to higher education, this is a massive chart why it's going to change dramatically. I take an optimistic view. I don't think necessarily people are going to be out of jobs. I think what's going to happen is we should be using technology to free us up to do more of creative human type of stuff, right? I'm not saying that a computer or a robot is going to teach classes, but it's, I also published an article in January that really gets to the heart of faculty in particular. I take to task software companies. Nobody talks about faculty success. Everybody talks about student success. Nobody talks about faculty success. Why? It's half the equation, don't you think? Right? And so, I believe technology is, if done properly, is really going to be impactful and positive, more positive than negative. Okay, so I try not to, the anxiety this kind of graph causes, and it causes a little anxiety in me. A lot of it's unknown, but I take more of an optimistic view. Now, the other thing that I think is really interesting is, how many of you read Thomas Friedman's latest book, Thank You for Being Late? Anybody here has read that? Okay. If you're interested on this topic, I like Thomas Friedman. I've read most of his books. I don't necessarily always agree with him, but he has an interesting, this book really takes, again, more optimistic view about technology, but there's one particular chart that's relatively simple that really starts to put things into perspective about how we as individuals and how we as higher education institutions or organizations have to change. Because the curve that we've been dealing with, this curve right here is the technology, right? So you go all the way back to, I don't know, the steam engine, right? And this is our ability to adapt to that. And we're actually now at a point where we're about here. Okay, so we're already experiencing it. I mean, it's only been 10, 11 years since the iPhone came out. Right? I mean, just think about, when you start to think about the impact that the iPhone has had in 10 years, it's just astonishing. I mean, on your personal life, I mean, I have 4 kids, and it's just a constant battle with these guys about how addicted they are to their phones. I have to talk to them about addiction. I'm like, that's addiction. You can't put it down. Put it down. It's not real, right? And so we're struggling, right? I mean, I'm in technology and I'm having these conversations, and so ultimately, what does this mean, right? This is accelerating. It's not stopping. Okay, but I think that there's some things that we can do to address this. Just more evidence, right? This is students in terms of student expectations, in terms of how much time they are spending on their device, quite a lot, right? And then how they use technology, right? I suspect that this number 94 is going to continue to go up, but I also think that this pie chart is going to be, it's not like the bulk of it is about convenience. I do think it is going to be convenience, but I think if we start to do our job, like managing class activities and improved learning, I would expect these two to go up in percentage. But, so I have a 4th grader, I have a 9th grader, I have a 12th grader, and then I have one that just graduated college. Going back to this, well, yeah, never mind. To this slide, these guys are expecting, their expectations, especially the ones that are just entering college, are pretty significantly high when it comes to mobile, right? In addition to all that, there's a significant amount of pressure that's being put on as institutions. Again, there's less and less institutions that can afford the bureaucracy. Prospect pool is declining, and this is primarily for North America. Increased competition. Government oversight. All these sound familiar? Increased choices. I mean, I know when I went to college, community college wasn't really an option for me. I wanted to go a 4-year. But I think in today's economic world, debt and loans, that potentially is a real option for more and more students. I mean, I know as a parent, this is a big deal for me. The price tag on in-state, out-of-state, all that is, as a consumer of all this, it's pretty scary. And then certainly not least, are employers. Again, I believe a liberal arts background, but I think employers expect a certain capability, awareness, knowledge, tools from students. And I think we need to do a better job of educating on that. And again, I'm going to pull it back to the mobile, right? You guys have that opportunity. And one of the key things around the Kurogo or Moto Labs framework on this is it's an enterprise solution. It's relatively lightweight that can sit on top and essentially consolidate your user experience in a relatively low-cost way. And that's the real power of Moto. When I was at Ellucian, we were going head-to-head. And so Ellucian, for those how many of you actually are on a Ellucian system, or at least know of a Ellucian system? I'd be curious to hear otherwise, but as far as I know, these guys are backing off significantly on their investment on these innovative type products like Ellucian Mobile and so on. And then legacy technology. So I'm going to stop there for a second. Any questions so far? Is this making sense to you guys? Am I depressing everybody? Yeah, in the back.
You said you published articles. Where do you publish articles?
Where do I publish my articles? I'm not going to tell you. No. If you go, there's a couple different places. If you go to hire.digital, www.hire.digital, yes, there's no .com. We actually got the domain .digital, or actually got hire and .digital. They're on there. The latest one is on medium.com. I've been publishing most of my articles on medium.com, as well as LinkedIn. So, by the way, if you guys, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, but if I don't know you and you do the standard, like I'd like to connect and I'm not going to accept it. Send me a note. Hey, saw you at the Kurogo conference. Love to hear more. I'll totally accept it. Okay? And I love any feedback. I grew up with a German mother, so I'm very used to harsh and direct feedback, for better or for worse. So each institution needs to become a cohesive digital learning organization. Yeah, right? Possible, heard that before. Can't happen, right? We're too siloed, right? I beg to differ. And let me explain. And I'm not I'm not naive. I believe that there's certain things that aren't going to change within an institution. But when you look at a typical organization and operations of an institution, is that at the top you have the board, you got a president or chancellor, depending if you're a system or an institution, and then you typically it splits between academic and business. And then from there you have leaders, and in many cases you have a lot of budget authority, decision-making authority, right? All essentially siloed down. The IT organization tends to be the only centralized organization. How many of you are officially part of IT? Okay, good chunk of you. And what happens is everybody, because of the organization and structure of it, everybody above the IT organization, and I'm not saying this is actually not correct, this is not the reporting structure. This tends to be, but in terms of IT, everybody has a direct line into IT. More or less everybody that I've been interacting with, IT organization has a trouble ticketing system or something, it just puts it into a queue. And so what you have is you have an organization. By the way, historically, this organization, you go back 40, 50 years, the reason this organization came about is, hey, my copier is broken. My phone or my laptop or my computer needs fixed, right? And so this model of like, hey, we got problems, you queue it up, fundamentally has not changed for the institutions that I've been involved with, right? But in today's world, right, that is broken. That is completely broken, okay? And the other piece to that is broken is the output of this, right, more or less, right? These are generalities. The output, the strategy is owned up at the upper level. And then the execution is owned at this level. And the problem is that these two aren't connected. That's what needs to change. In addition to that, and for those that aren't in IT, I'm going to give you another appreciation of how challenging IT's jobs are. This is the 2018 higher education technology landscape. These are all the different companies, these are all the different segments inside of it. Let me put it in more specific terms for you. We have a client institution who's 10,000 FTE, tuition driven, and they have 30 enterprise systems. They have probably another 20 to 30 subsystems on top of that. That translates into roughly about 50 vendors. 50 vendors with competing sales messages, demos, technologies, competing products. And this world is only getting more complicated. Okay? And so not only is IT typically managing these direct, like who screams the loudest, priorities, right, that are completely disconnected from the strategy, pet projects, things like that. Hey, I don't like our new CRM system. I'm going to buy my own. Here, IT, go deal with it. On top of that, they're dealing with all this coming from the vendors, right? And so what you have is you have a world in which your technologists, most savvy ones, are in constant firefighting mode. Dealing with these trouble ticket requests, trying to stay afloat. It's also part of the reason why morale is generally not very good in IT organizations, so on and so forth. So how do we overcome these traditional silos? Because the reality is these organizations aren't going to change. But something absolutely has to change. This doesn't work any longer. And so I think the answer to this, simply put, really kind of comes into what I call the holy trinity of business success. People, process, and product. So a good way to kind of give this as an example, right? In today's world and going forward, you can't just buy a product. You can't buy a point solution and call it a day. You have to understand how this particular product, because the reality is the level of integrations that are needed today and then are going to be needed in the future are only going to increase. So your point solution is no longer a point solution tomorrow. It's going to be integrated with more. 5 other solutions. 10 years from now, it'll be 15, right? And that's the world that we live in. And so the process also includes how do you align your strategic plan with what you're buying? How does that really, are we really buying something and doing something where it's really impactful? And one of the examples I give in the latest article I wrote is that in that case of a trouble ticketing system, this one client institution didn't have a prioritization capabilities turned on. They were looking at getting rid of it. And I'm arguing, don't just take stock of what you have. Really evaluate to make sure that you understand the tool, and it is doing exactly what you're hoping it needs to be done, and then customizations and things like that. And then people. I heard some of the kind of the general themes. I guess it was Dorian Freeman from Harvard who was talking about decentralization. I heard about talking to people. This also fits within that. And everybody has a role, whether you're in IT or not, everybody has a role of taking technology and taking responsibility for the technology. And I think that you guys have an opportunity, and I get the frustrations the day in and day out that you guys got to deal with. But I think that there's a way to start to demonstrate, especially with mobile. It's fast, it's easy, it's a great, powerful way to really demonstrate, because you can't do this as a big bang. We believe in simple and innovative, and not big bang, right? So start taking trials, areas within your organization, your institution, to start to demonstrate how can we take a particular product and start to look at other ways that we can include people in a process as a way to model for other departments and other organizations within the institution. Oops, wrong way. So the article that I published ties into the 4 simple steps that you can do now within higher education. I already alluded to this one, but leverage what you have in place. 5 minutes, okay. I'm going to want to wrap up, at least open up for some questions. So leverage what you have in place. Like for people, clarify roles. In terms of process, include IT in all aspects of strategy, all aspects. I can't tell you how many times I've been part of, or lack thereof, in terms of a strategic plan that had no input from IT. Right. One of our clients, their 10-year strategic plan is coming up. They're writing a new one, thankfully. And can you believe that the word mobile actually never appeared in their strategic plan? And they've been dealing with it for 10 years? That's got to change. Product, simplify and consolidate. A word of advice or thoughts here. Try to really be serious about end-of-lifing products. Pull the plug. Right? Somebody's not using something, pull the plug. Right? Somebody's not using a module, pull the plug. Right? Complexity is not our friend. All right. So, first step, leverage what you got in place. People, process, and product. Enhance areas of weakness. People, create new roles that bridge strategy and execution. We tend to tell and advise most institutions they need to inject a product management organization. I don't care where they live. It could be in IT, but it needs to be centralized. CRM product manager. Then you measure it. And then learn and adjust. And there's a way that we believe that we can do this. So given the amount of time, I'm going to stop here. I do have, you guys all have, you guys will have this deck. There's some additional slides in here. I will put it in a plug. We are offering a free digital health assessment. If you go to our website, hire.digital, it's just below the fold. And it's called C Results. C stands for Simplified Enterprise Agile, and it takes 15 minutes. And you will get a 12-page custom report for your institution based upon your input. We're going to be going forward from Hire Digital. We're going to be building that out pretty significantly and innovating around that. But we're going to be trying to deliver expertise, knowledge, and tools for you guys to help you with the digital transformation, your strategy, at a much lower cost. The other way to put it, our kind of, as a company, what we're really looking, if you believe in digital disruption, we want to disrupt the consulting industry. Right? And nobody else is doing this in any other industry. So this is early on for us, so love to kind of get your feedback. Even if it's negative and you think it's not worth anything, that feedback is worth something to me. So I appreciate the time. And any questions that you guys have? Feedback? No questions? Okay. Well, I will be around for the rest of the day and tomorrow, so please feel free to come up to me and talk to me and ask me any questions. So thank you.